Thanks for tuning in to the Illuminations Podcast. We love having you here. It is our mission to be a beacon of light on your journey towards conscious and mindful living. In our weekly episode, we bring you inspiring change makers in the field of spirituality, healing, personal growth, and wellness who share their insight and expertise so you can navigate your way to a happier, healthier, and more purposeful life.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Illuminations World Podcast. My name is Nia Roy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, sound therapist, and yoga teacher here at Illuminations. And we are back with another episode with another speaker. And I cannot wait to get started on this particular topic because it's something that's very close to my heart. And today's topic is all about the astonishing truth behind the root cause of chronic health conditions. And the speaker for today is Dr. Geraldine. So Geraldine is passionate about providing personal wellness solutions that are focused, non-invasive, safe, effective, and trauma-informed. She has a special interest in anxiety, depression, chronic pain, chronic illnesses, autoimmunity, ADHD, and general wellness. And to tell you a little bit more about Dr. Geraldine, she is also very excited to offer Dubai the expertise of her multidimensional quantum medicine approach to facilitate much needed change in order to optimize health and wellness using cutting-edge 21st century mind-body interventions. She's very powerfully helped restore harmony and synchronicity to individuals of all ages. So welcome to the show, Dr. Geraldine. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Nia. I'm really excited to be chatting to you about my favorite topic anyway.
Absolutely. And before we get started, I must share a disclaimer to all our viewers. Anything that's discussed in this show today, do not self-diagnose. So do not use it to self-diagnose. Please go to a professional and do not self-diagnose. So on that note, I would first like to start off with something that you shared. So you said the human experience is complex. And this complexity has to be accommodated and considered if you wish to ignite your capacity for healing. It is well documented that stress and trauma are major underlying causes of anxiety, depression, chronic pain, chronic illness, ADHD, and more. Understanding the root causes of an individual's experience and identifying exactly where in the body a person is holding these limitations is a game changer. I truly resonate with that because I had an autoimmune disease called psoriasis, and I was asked to be on medications for a very long time. And it was only until I looked at the subconscious reasonings of how this came about in the first place that I managed to heal it from my body. So on that note, I would like to, throw the ball to you and tell us a little bit about how this all works when it comes to chronic health conditions and what do we need to look at?
Okay, so this is indeed a very complex topic, and we're just basically going to do as much as we can today.
Yeah.
So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge, people that have chronic illnesses, it is really quite a challenge to live with.
Yeah.
And, no one wants to be told that you have an ongoing condition that's going to limit you and require medical treatment for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. So we want to pause and just acknowledge that this is not easy in any way. And this talk today is not intended to be reductionist in nature.
Yeah.
Okay. We want to just put that out. I am hoping that you're going to listen with an open mind. And I really believe from my 18 years of experience that this is a piece of the puzzle that is missing for most people.
Yeah.
So, the essential question then is, what has caused you to be in this chronic state of collapse? Yeah. A lot of people, doctors will say, it starts in the gut or it starts in the spine, but there's a disconnect that happens before it gets into the physical body. And this is what our investigation really is in quantum medicine. So, the question is, we're always been told that the body can heal itself.
Yeah.
So what's really going on in chronic disease? When you take a deeper look, there really is an element of wounding that needs tending. Mm-hmm. And, people don't just wake up with chronic illness. It happens over a long period of time. And then suddenly they notice one day, hey, this is not working. Let me seek help.
Yeah.
So what happens is, really behind the scenes, there has been some kind of event, or perhaps a series of events, that are so deeply overwhelming or life-threatening, and the person doesn't have anywhere to put it.
Yeah.
Perhaps they didn't have any support, or perhaps they didn't understand what to do with the experience, and so they repress it.
Yeah.
So what results is lasting adverse effects on your psychoneurobiology. All right? So your mental, physical, emotional, your spiritual being, not being able to bounce back once the experience is over.
Right. Because it's stored in the body.
Yes. And you kind of remain stuck in that time of trauma or shock or stress. Mm-hmm. All right? So there's a really interesting article I'd love to quote. It was Harvard actually published this in the Journal of Pediatrics in Feb 2012, and I'm quoting here. Growing scientific evidence also demonstrates that social and physical environments that threaten human development because of scarcity, stress, or instability can lead to short-term physiologic and psychological adjustments that are necessary for immediate survival and adaptation, but which may come at a significant cost to long-term outcomes in learning, behavior, health, and longevity.
Wow.
End quote. So here's Harvard.
Yeah.
Really telling us what's going on because of the research.
Right.
Okay, so that's pretty amazing. So they're talking about survival and adaptation. Survival is in that moment of urgency, and adaptation is when an experience is prolonged. Okay, now a lot of the response, the typical response in the world is, hey, that happened a long time ago, get over it. Surely you can get over it. That is the worst advice you can give anyone.
Yeah.
Because what happens is we become wired for survival.
Right.
Okay. Stress and trauma can leave an imprint on your body and mind. It's not just something that you can think your way through.
You have to feel your way through.
You have to feel your way through. So even when you acknowledge rationally that you are safe, that the trauma is over, the experience is over, unconscious automatic habits can repeatedly warn you that some painful, dangerous thing is about to happen again.
Because it's now stored in the body as a memory.
Yes. And so you kind of go on in that cycle, right? You're living this hyper-aware life because of something that happened a long time ago.
And you keep expecting something to happen, so you become a lot more alert and vigilant and in that state of stress.
Yes. God, yes. And it's very interesting because, we receive information about life through our five senses. And this information is then passed on to the brain.
Right.
The central nervous system, which has another system called the autonomic nervous system, whose only job is to keep us alive.
Yeah, the parasympathetic and sympathetic.
And right, the autonomic nervous, that's the job, to keep us alive. And if your autonomic nervous system hasn't fully perceived that the danger or the potential danger is over, it's going to keep you in that highly revved up state.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when we talk about experiences, it's always interesting because when we look at memory, so memory we store in two ways.
Okay.
All right. The first way that we store memory is, something happened and I can talk about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I processed it, and it's just a happy memory, or a sad one, but I can talk about it, and yeah, I've dealt with it.
Yeah.
The second way is the interesting way, right? Because we're storing a memory that still has charge. Okay, so that you, for whatever reason, you were unable to process and integrate whatever happened to you. And so you push it down into the body without actually dealing with it. So how this shows up then is, if you tell a story and you start to cry because you're still so caught up in that emotion or in that experience, or if you repeat a story and you get really, really angry. This is what we call active memories. Some memories that are still active, but kind of running under the radar.
Yeah. So that just shows how undigested it is.
Yes. So I often use this analogy, and I love this analogy because it's so simple to understand. As a kid, did you ever try and push a beach ball under the water? At the swimming pool or at the beach, you hold the ball.
It just kind of goes up, or it's very hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you use all this energy and you kind of get on top of the ball and you push over and you really hold and you feel quite triumphant for a few moments.
And then
yep, it pops out again.
Yeah.
All right. And this is exactly what happens to us with these active memories.
Wow.
It takes a lot of energy to hold it underneath our conscious mind. And what essentially happens is we're using all our life's energy to hold something down that we really don't need to be holding down. And so you hear about people talking about chronic fatigue. I think it's perhaps one of the biggest challenges we have.
Yeah.
People are chronically tired from all this effort used to hold down experiences that are too painful and too difficult to really face.
Yeah.
Holding that ball down can be quite anxiety inducing, as you just said. Pop.
Yeah.
It's going to pop at some point. You just know that, right? And if you look at holding something down for an extended period of time, there's obviously going to be pain involved in that.
Yeah.
And quite an element of dysregulation as well.
Yeah.
So obviously, the beach ball that we're talking about is some kind of event or stressor, trauma, something that happened, whatever it was that overwhelmed you at the time. And it's been really pretty much impossible for you to integrate into your life.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is most people think that we store memory just in the mind or in the brain. But that's not true, because have you ever walked by someone and they smell so good and you're like, oh, I love that. That reminds me of someone you love, right? Or you smell food and you think, oh, this takes me back to my mom's kitchen. This is so good. So we do store memory in our five senses as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, when we're looking at these traumas and what are they, we have the obvious traumas. So there's the war. It's quite prevalent in the world at the moment. The loss of a loved one. We're looking at natural disasters, economic crashes, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? All these very real traumas.
So significant shifts in your environment, in your space, in your emotions.
Outside
that you're not. Yeah.
Yes. All right. But what I'd really like to talk about today is really the more subtle, lesser known traumas. So we can have experiences that will show up in the body as trauma.
Yeah.
And this is based on what we call attachment theory. Now, a baby is born with two basic needs. The first need is the need for attachment. Because, as you know, babies are probably the most helpless of all creatures you will ever meet. And so the need for attachment is really, it's life-saving. The baby needs to attach to a caregiver, usually the mom, but a caregiver. The second need is the need for authenticity.
Right.
So, 7 billion people and only I have this thumbprint. Right? And more than half of this 7 billion has brown eyes. But my eyes are unique. So we're born authentic. But here's the plot twist. if the attachment is threatened in any way, the baby will give up its sense of self, its sense of authenticity, its own identity in order to maintain the attachment.
That is so interesting. Can you give me an example of that?
Yes, of course. So, a baby has needs, of course, right? And there are certain things, you find new babies, if you put something in their mouth, they're very quick to spit it out if they don't like the taste of it. But if the mom is unable to attach to the baby will kind of swallow things that are not so pleasant because it wants to maintain the attachment with the mom. Right? Everything about the baby is really oriented towards maintaining the attachment. Now, this is so interesting because what happens is we spend the rest of our lives trying to regain that sense of authenticity, right?
And it starts from
It starts from a very, very beginning.
Wow, but a lot of people are not even conscious of it.
No, it's not something that's commonly known, and this is why I wanted to talk about this aspect of chronic illness today, because it starts right at the beginning, right? And when you look at people with chronic illness, they're not typically people that want to rock the boat. They don't usually complain, or if they do complain, then they over complain and everyone just shuts them out, right? So usually what precedes illness and this holding of tension and tautness and anxiety within the body really becomes an inability to say no.
Wow.
When people are not able to really have a boundary of where I end and where you begin, back in that attachment story, it leads to patterns in life that, I end up feeling abused because I don't know where my boundaries are. I cannot say no. And the result is feeling abused, disrespected, manipulated, dominated, all these people-pleasing behaviors. So I agree to be nice just because I don't want people to reject me.
Wow. Because it's fulfilling a need in some way. But this coping mechanism need not always be beneficial.
Yep. No, it's definitely not beneficial in the long run to anyone. And other things like, that inability to make decisions, dependence on other people's opinions. If you are so attached to your parents or to your primary caregiver that only their opinion matters, it reaches a point where you don't know how to make a decision on your own. Right?
Yeah.
So, and this is now, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Basically, with this relationship, you start to lack agency, you lack capacity. And babies, of course, as we know, are born without the capacity to regulate themselves. And so they are very dependent on the attachment for the caregiver to regulate them.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at, most people, we don't know. Back in, I studied psychology 30 years ago. It was a bit different then. And back then, psychoanalysts were talking about the mother wound. And I disagree with that concept so strongly because pretty much most mothers are not setting out to wound their children.
Yeah.
They are basically stuck in their own trauma.
Yeah. And it's a cycle that just keeps.
And a woman that is stuck in her own trauma is not going to be able to attach to her baby.
Wow.
And her baby is going to give up its sense of authenticity in order to maintain that attachment. The other fascinating thing is that, in the first 4 years of a child's life, that child will do absolutely everything to heal any kind of wounding in the mom or dad, in the primary caregiver. And so you've probably heard, every little one under the age of 4, my mommy is the prettiest in the whole universe. Or my dad is the strongest in the whole world. Everything is oriented around the parent.
Yeah.
And if there is any kind of disconnect with the parent's going through something difficult, the child is not able to say, oh, you know what, my dad's having a rough time or mom's feeling disconnected. The child will interpret that to mean something about themselves. And the first place they go is, I'm not good enough.
Wow, because that's a logical understanding to something that they don't understand, which is the emotions that they're feeling.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. It's pretty fascinating. So just keeping with that same journal, I have another quote. So they say here, Harvard says again, the interactions of genes and experiences literally shapes the circuitry of the developing brain and is critically influenced by the mutual responsiveness of adult-child relationships, particularly in the early years. Okay, so they're talking about genes and experiences. And this is commonly known as epigenetics. I don't know, most people have probably not heard about it. Because when you look at chronic illness, less than 5% of all known disease and illness is genetic. That is insane.
Yeah.
So there's a huge portion of epigenetic influence that is making people sick. So when we talk about genes and experiences, you know, our own biology is a result of what we've inherited.
Yeah.
And I think your listeners are quite familiar with this concept of ancestral impact.
Yeah.
So we didn't just land here, right? We came about as a result of our ancestors getting together.
Yeah.
And when you look at your ancestral story, you know, when you dive deeper into it, what was their experience? Were they living in times of famine? Were they escaping war? What were the coping mechanisms that they were forced to live with? And that you've now inherited those genes.
Yeah, because it was part of their experience. So clearly they probably had their own belief systems around that, which now is in your DNA, I believe.
Yep. And that, you know, that high functioning, high anxiety, because they were fleeing for their lives. It was a matter of life and death. And if you've inherited this, I mean, I have so many people that have come to me to say, I don't know why I'm sick, because I have this amazing life. And then we go and have a look at the inheritance. And they say, oh, but that's my parents' story. It's not my story, but it is your story. It is very much your story.
So looking at what triggered that memory, there must be something there as well.
Yep. So it's always interesting because we think that we are just our own biology and our own experience.
Absolutely
But
not,
we're not.
right? Yeah.
You know, and that quote that you began with, that we are a product of our own biology, our ancestral story, and our environment. So bigger things in life that we have been exposed to, look at things like racism, sexism, all the isms basically.
Yeah.
You know, all the prejudices, cultural belief systems.
Yeah.
What were you actually raised with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another really important aspect that I do look at whenever I address chronic illness is family secrets.
It's so interesting that you say that because it's very much in your DNA. And at Illuminations, we do a modality called family constellations. And this is exactly what comes up: family secrets, family beliefs, and all of that.
Yep. Family taboos, family identity.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never forget, I had a lady come to see me a few years ago, and she had a whole list. She'd filled in the intake form, but when I looked at her, she very clearly had eczema, but she hadn't put that on her intake. She didn't want to address that. Right. So when I asked about it, she says, oh, this is nothing. She says, you know, she told me her family name, and she said, everyone in my family and in my extended family has this. And if you don't have it, then you do not belong to this family.
Look at that loyalty, right?
Family loyalty.
Wow.
Family identity. So identifying with your family, what portion of your illness is related to, if I don't get sick like the rest of them, I don't actually belong in here. So it's pretty fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, just talking a little more about that attachment, John Bowlby described 3 main attachment styles. And why is this important? Again, it's not common information that's out there. And this is why I'd love to share this, because your attachment style really does become your biology. He described something that is called secure attachment. which is where the child has a secure base to move from. Now, when there is secure attachment with the mother, there's a natural outpouring, a natural flow of endorphins. Okay, now we know endorphins are natural painkillers.
Yeah.
Okay, so people that are stuck in chronic pain and you're taking all the pills and doing all the things, really what has been your patterning of endorphin production?
Wow. So you can really connect the dot with your relationship with your mother.
Yep. Wow. Or your primary caregiver, whoever that was. Now, I'd like to really just be cautious here. We're not blaming the mother or the caregiver. Again, we do not know what trauma they were stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely.
That resulted in their behavior.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, the baby will take everything to mean something about themselves.
Absolutely. And I love that you addressed that, because it does allow you to look at your mother from a very empathetic point of view, rather than with judgment. You know, when you don't receive, you can easily say, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But when you look at what was beyond that and what she went through, it allows you to empathize.
Yes. You know, a huge part of my work is showing people how to be compassionate to themselves and compassionate to others. It really is the gold when it comes to wellness and healing.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, one of the endorphins is oxytocin. And this is that feel-good hormone. You know, when you get hugged, loved and kissed by someone, your body produces this oxytocin, which is this feel-good, feel-loved hormone. Later on in life, it really allows us to have a strategy of using someone else to calm us down, right? So there's self-regulation and there's co-regulation. And babies are not capable of self-regulating. So they have to regulate with an adult.
Yeah.
Okay. The other style, of course, the opposite style of attachment is what we call ambivalent, avoidant, insecure attachment, which is basically a lack of safety all around.
Wow.
Right? And of course, that comes with its own set of hormones. So the body is constantly learning how to be. Yeah. And if there's constantly a lack of connection, a lack of safety, what happens is the body will then produce the appropriate hormones. So there is no system in the body that operates in isolation. Everything is connected to everything else.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that it's all about regulating, you know, and how the body just wants to be. So whatever that state you're in, the hormones being produced is just so that it can bring that to rest. But in that process, it can lead to loads of physical disorders and autoimmune diseases and so on.
Yeah. So, you know, just looking at attachment as a starting point, we can see how a lifetime of stress hormones, because of ambivalent, avoidant, insecure attachment, is going to lead to blood pressure problems and heart problems and a whole cascade of other disruptions in your hormonal system.
Yeah.
All right. So we talk about endocrine attachment pathways, so hormonal attachment. Whatever your attachment style, there's a resulting hormone profile that goes with that.
Yeah.
And when that is disrupted, it results in symptoms and syndromes galore. Right? The other point I'd love to talk about is the immune system. So I usually describe the immune system as having two branches. The one arm is really the soldiers. So that's your army. That's there to defend you, protect you, no matter what. And the other arm of the immune system really is what we call the peacekeeping force.
Right.
So when you wake up in the morning and you have this lack of safety, which arm of your immune system is being engaged? The soldiers.
Yeah.
Right? And when there's constant lack of safety every day, all day, and if you live, you know, just as an example, if you live with an unpredictable adult, you don't know what version of that adult is going to walk in the door. Right? So your immune system, your immune response is going to be, there's danger. I need to protect myself. So the soldiers go out every day trying to maintain homeostasis, trying to get rid of the bad guys in the system because they just know there's something bad that needs to be gotten rid of in this moment. And what happens is when there's too much of soldiers running around in your immune system, they're basically setting fire to everything, tagging everything so that the body can get rid of it. Yeah. And this essentially is what inflammation is all about.
Haha. That's so interesting. And that's so well said. Wow.
So I love using analogies. It just makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So when you look at everything, all chronic illness starts with inflammation.
Yeah.
And where does this inflammation really begin? Like we said, some people will say it starts here and starts there, but really begins with your feeling of safety or lack of safety in your life.
Wow.
Now again, some people say, well, my stories, I've been safe. What's the ancestral story? We always come back to that at some point or the other. We have to acknowledge if my ancestors lived a really stressful life, my immune system is going to respond to what they adapted to.
Yeah.
Hence my level of inflammation.
But would it not be the case where if they've such a stressful life that you'd more or less be immune to it or perhaps can handle it a lot better? Would that not be the case?
So we're talking two different things, right? We're talking emotional resilience, okay, which difficulty and adversity can give rise to, but we're also talking physical response here.
Got you.
Okay, so just going back to this article that I just love, and I quote again, the architecture of the brain is constructed to an ongoing process that begins before birth, continues into adulthood, and establishes either a sturdy or a fragile foundation for all the health, learning, and behavior that follows. End quote.
Wow.
So here's Harvard even acknowledging the impact on the baby even before birth. Wow. Okay. Now we know that the womb life is really preparation for what's to come. Mm-hmm. Okay. And, babies will, like you'll find some babies, they can sleep through the biggest amount of noise and chaos.
Absolutely.
Because they were used to that before they were born. And other babies, the slightest sound just triggers them. They're awake and they're screaming and they're destabilized by that. So really the womb, the fetal life is a preparation of life to come. And I just want to mention a few things that I always consider when treating someone with chronic illness. Because like we said, we just understood very clearly that this process begins before birth. Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So, was there trouble conceiving a baby? What was the parent's stress level like? Were there any miscarriages before the baby was conceived?
That's so interesting.
Because if you look at just that, the mom's stress, am I going to carry this baby to term?
So that self-doubt element.
Yes. And that baby's completely understanding every emotion the mom's experiencing. Right? Was there a sibling that died before the baby was conceived? Was there pressure to conceive, from the dad, from the in-laws, from family? Society also tells you need to have a baby by this age and so on.
Did the mother want to have the baby?
Exactly. Was it an unplanned baby? Was it an unwanted baby? Was there pressure on mom to deliver a baby of a certain gender?
Ah, right.
Okay, because if you really need to deliver a son and you have a daughter, it's this anxiety through the whole pregnancy of, oh my goodness, what if it's a girl? And of course, in the mom's bloodstream is all her stress hormones. And where does the baby get his blood supply from?
There you go. Wow. And are you saying that this may be the cause of a lot of people having...
Setting you up for life of stress and anxiety that disrupts your entire physiology.
So if you're looking at people with low hemoglobin levels and any blood-related issues.
It's fascinating because when you look at blood issues, it's really related to blood ties.
And the inception of it comes from your mother.
Right from the get-go.
Oof.
Yeah, and also at birth, like what was the birth experience like?
Yeah.
What was the anxiety level like around the introduction of this baby into the world? Was there trauma? Was it a planned birth? Was there complications? Was dad present? Was dad absent? Was mom in pain? Did she need surgery? Did baby have to be incubated after birth? Now, you have these 9 months, 40 weeks of incubation in this perfect environment. And suddenly you're born into this world with harsh lights and, everyone handling you and cleaning you and jabbing you and
Yeah.
and then they rush you off to an incubator and you're completely separated.
Yeah. Ooh.
That leaves an impact too.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and also, some babies, some births are just an emergency and there's no preparation.
Yeah.
And so all this anxiety that the newborn is 100% subjected to, and that sets the tone for what comes after. If your first experience of life is traumatic and unsafe and it's just, I don't know what's going on here and there's anxiety all around me, well, then I'm learning that I have to be that way too. Right? I know Dr. Gabor shared something pretty fascinating recently. He said, when they record the brain activity of a 6-month-old baby using an EEG, you can actually tell from that if the mother is depressed.
Oh, wow. Wow.
This is serious stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so knowing all of this, how can you just handle mental health with medication?
Can you see it has its place? 100%. But there's so much more to the story.
There's so much more.
Again, this is where my work is it's why I love it. I feel so passionately about it. If we look at brain development, a baby is born with less than 30% of the adult brain capacity.
Yeah.
And brain development really is a continuous process. And when you look at threat and insecurity, the brain becomes wired accordingly. Okay? So if there's sustained unpredictability, uncertainty, lack of control, the brain becomes hardwired and fear-driven. And as we know, the brain controls the physiology. Right? So a fear-driven brain is going to result in a disorganized, dysfunctional physiology right from the get-go.
Wow.
I love telling stories, so let me tell you one more. You probably are familiar with the Princess and the Pea.
Yeah.
So, they wanted to prove the authenticity of the princess.
Mm-hmm.
And so they laid down 12 mattresses with 12 eiderdowns, and they placed a pea inside there.
Yeah.
And the princess was very aware that there was some discomfort that she had experienced. And this is exactly what goes on with chronic illness. As the brain develops over time, and each layer of development is being laid down, there's this discomfort, this disconnect, this trauma, this event, this experience, this lack of connection that's being laid down over time.
Yeah.
And a person is very, very aware that something is not quite right. Sometimes people will say to you, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just know something's not quite right.
Yeah. You have that gut feeling.
Yes. And the brain perceives danger. Obviously, it's going to respond. So it activates your limbic system. It activates your emotional system. You have these behavioral responses in an attempt to keep you safe. It's always the goal is survival, right? And when you look at nervous system responses, 4 of the most basic responses that we have that we kind of categorized, we look at the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn.
Yeah.
Now, probably most people have heard of this, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah.
Right? when you look at the fight response, it is an explosive response. So there's all this anger and, stress hormones. And what's that doing? If you're living in a fight response and living in a survival response like we described, what's that doing to your blood pressure? What's that doing to your heart? What's it doing to your liver? Your gallbladder, all of these things. Looking at the flight response, we say that this is more fear-based response. So instead of the defensive fight, it's more I'll run away kind of a flight response, right? And as we see in the overthinker, in the workaholic, the perfectionist, and all of these things are precursors to chronic illness.
Wow.
People that overwork, why they're overworking. Basically, they want to show the world that they are capable. Because they were not seen as really young children, they decided, I'm going to really put everything I've got, all my effort, all my life, into working so I am appreciated.
So it's coming from a place of void.
Yep. Right. And all this anxiety, panic-inducing behavior is affecting your kidneys. And when you look at Chinese medicine, we understand that the kidneys are directly related to diabetic health. Right. Also, with this fear response is addiction. Flight response, fight response, alternating between all these states. Typically, I know back in the day, I used to think, these are bad people. These people are just, stay away from the addicts. You don't want to go near them. But I have come to realize that they really are traumatized people.
Yeah.
And there is an emptiness of void in them that you just talked about.
Yeah.
That they try to fill with all these different things.
Yeah.
Right. Looking at the freeze response, feeling stuck. That's what is the essence of arthritis.
Wow.
Right. Feeling isolated, feeling dissociated. This is basically depression. Yeah. The fawn response, where I will submit to you no matter what, for my own safety. This results in trauma bonding. Why do women stay in abusive relationships?
Right.
It is what we call a survival response.
Based on survival. That makes so much sense. So now that we know more or less where this is stemming from, before we end the show, what tips do you have for people so they can just get started with something, especially if they're suffering from chronic ailments? How could they just make that first step? What do they need to do?
Firstly, you do need to enlist the help of someone else. Look, talk therapy definitely has its place, and I would say perhaps start there. The difference with my work, of course, is that more than just telling me your story, I'm going to find out where in your body you're holding the story. Where is the disconnect? And with quantum medicine, we're able to reconnect areas of disconnection in the body very profoundly.
Absolutely. And I can testify to that because I just had a session with Dr. Geraldine an hour ago, and it is mind-blowing how you could touch base on certain points that I wasn't too aware of, but I could then recollect, and it's amazing how you could really identify that through the work that you're doing. And it's so important and it's so relevant, and it just shows how this is the missing gap in when it comes to treating chronic illnesses.
Yes. So look, of course I am available via Illuminations. So if anyone's really interested and their curiosity has been piqued, please give us a call. This is where you can find me. I'd like to just end with a quote by Susan Freibart. In that quote, she says, "Trauma is birthed without a language to describe its existence, offering no organizational process to verbalize a coherent narrative."
Wow.
And so talk is not enough. right? With my approach, I use quantum medicine, which is top-down processing, and I also use somatic experiencing, bottom-up processing, because there's no substitute for either of these things. When there's trauma and stress in the physical body, it leaves layers and layers of invisible bruises, which keep you in a chronic state of collapse.
Yeah.
And the resulting stuckness or limitation restricts not just your physical movement, but also your movement into life. People sometimes feel, I can't quite get to my next goal. It's really a much deeper story. And so, I'm available in Dubai, and I'm really excited to bring my work here and to really help people find really where did your disconnect really begin? Where did your patterns, your imprinting of illness really, really start?
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Geraldine, for being with me here today and sharing so much of the work that you do. It was super, super insightful. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. Until next time, take care and live.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to have you tune in again next week as we discuss more engaging topics on relationships, health, career, self-care, and spirituality. If you'd like to help support this podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave us a rating and review. We'd be extremely grateful. To catch all the latest from us, you can also follow us on Instagram at Illuminations World or visit the Illuminations World YouTube channel for more inspiring content. See you again next week, and until then, live light.